This advanced story begins with a man named Gray, who lived with his beautiful wife. Gray's wife worked in an IT company owned by a man named Aaron. This company was a rapidly growing organization that was making a lot of money in today's time. Meanwhile, Gray was a normal mechanic who repaired cars. He felt quite proud of his wife because she earned more than him, and together they were living a good lifestyle. Now, we see Gray heading to deliver a car to one of his clients, and he mentions that he will drop his wife at the office on the way. So, Gray sets out directly with his wife to meet his client. However, when they arrive at the client's location, they discover that the client is none other than Gray's wife's boss, Aaron. Aaron is taken aback upon seeing them and exclaims how great a coincidence it is. Gray delivers Aaron's car and begins to chat with him. At this point, Aaron informs Gray and his wife about a very advanced experiment he is working on. It involves a small chip that, when implanted in a human body, grants them some strange powers. In a way, these individuals could be called superhumans. Aaron had been continuously working on this experiment and had invested a lot into it. After discussing all the details and signing the documents, Gray leaves with his wife. After work, they were both together, comfortably seated in the car and heading home. The car they were in was quite advanced and operated automatically, so Gray set it to autopilot mode and began to enjoy some light-hearted banter with his wife. However, after traveling a short distance, the car's system suddenly displayed an error, leading to a collision with a breaker, causing the car to flip over. In this accident, Gray and his wife sustained significant injuries. Suddenly, some people resembling gangsters arrived near their crashed car. Without wasting any time, they pulled Gray's wife out of the car and shot her dead. Gray tried to save his wife, but the gang members severely beat him up. And they shoot into his spinal cord, which doesn't kill Gray, but he is unable to move from one place. Gray begins to cry intensely because the gang members killed his beautiful wife right before his eyes, a memory he would never forget. The next day, when Gray was taken to the hospital, it was discovered that his entire body had become paralyzed. He couldn't move at all, and it was his mother who was taking care of him. In a moment, Gray's life had completely changed. At one point, he thought he should commit suicide, but his mother always motivated him. One day, Aaron unexpectedly comes to visit Gray and discusses a business deal with him. Aaron reminds Gray of the experiment involving the small chip he had been working on. He clearly tells Gray that the only thing that can help him, given his paralysis, is this small experiment. Aaron explains that they would implant that small chip into Gray's body, which would resolve all his problems and make him completely normal again. Initially, Gray refused to agree to all of this, but he didn't want to spend his entire life paralyzed like this, so he eventually agreed to the experiment. However, it was clear that Aaron stood to gain significantly from this arrangement, as he had found a subject to test his experiment on. The government would never accept Aaron's experiment, so he was conducting everything secretly to avoid detection. After properly arranging everything, the experiment was finally performed on Gray. They included the small chip where his spinal cord was damaged. The process was done very quickly, and within a short time, Gray's experiment was successful. They just had to wait for the chip to start affecting Gray's body, which happened a few days later. After the chip was implanted, Gray, whose body had been completely paralyzed, began to walk on his own again. He was able to control his body completely, just like he used to before. Aaron and all of his employees were extremely happy that their experiment was working perfectly. Gray started receiving proper training on how to control his body. Additionally, Aaron took Gray's signature, ensuring that he would not disclose any information about the experiment. Gray signed the documents and accepted all these conditions. After completing a long training period, Gray had full control over his body. He went straight home, hoping to live a normal life. But little did he know that Gray's life was about to change completely. While Gray was in his kitchen, he heard a voice. When he looked around, no one was there. It then dawned on him that the voice was coming from within his body. In fact, the small chip that Aaron and his organization had implanted in Gray contained an AI. This AI was literally talking to Gray and explaining many things about what he could do. Gray was delighted to have advanced technology that allowed him to communicate and find solutions to various problems. Meanwhile, several police officers were investigating the murder of Gray's wife, and they sent the reports related to the investigation to Gray's house so he would be informed. When Gray started watching the video footage, he saw how some gang members had killed his wife. However, the video was so blurry that no one's face was clearly visible. Gray tried to zoom in to get a better look, but he couldn't make out anything. Just then, the chip inside Gray suddenly began to speak to him. It said, "I can handle this," and started to render the video more clearly. Still, the faces of the gang members were not visible. However, the chip managed to spot a tattoo on one of the gangster's hands, saying, "I can draw this." When Gray asked the chip to draw it, it began to control Gray's hand and perfectly replicated the tattoo that was on the gang member's hand. Gray was completely shocked by all the feats of the chip inside him and started investigating the tattoo. The chip was helping him find solutions to whatever he needed. By following the tattoo, Gray traced it back to a man, so he went to his house. Upon entering, he looked around, hoping to find a clue because this was the house of one of the gang members who had killed Gray's wife. But then Gray heard someone coming into the house. Although he tried to hide, the gang member spotted him. The member grabbed Gray and started beating him severely, demanding to know who had told him about him. The gang members already knew Gray. After beating him badly, the gang member moved to finish him off. At that moment, the chip in Gray's body said, "Can I control your body? It will ensure your protection." Gray didn't understand anything, but he granted permission to the chip. Suddenly, Gray's body became quite agile, and using his new fighting techniques, he began to severely beat the gang member. One attack after another, he finally killed the man. After the job was done, the chip released control of Gray's body. Gray didn't want to do any of this, but for his protection, he had no choice. The chip told Gray that he needed to destroy all evidence before leaving. Gray complied and erased the evidence accordingly. He then went straight back home. Now we see a police officer named Mia, who was investigating the murder of Gray's wife. A dead body of the gang member had been brought to their department. During the autopsy, some strange substances were found in the body. Mia didn't know what these substances were, but it was the criminal they had already suspected. Mia then started checking around the gang member's house using drone cameras. But at the time of the gang member's murder, Gray was seen moving around in a wheelchair near the house. Because of this, Mia came directly to Gray's house to interrogate him. Gray was acting paralyzed, sitting in his chair. Mia explained to him that they had previously suspected the gang member who had just been murdered of killing his wife, and he had been spotted at the murder scene in a wheelchair. However, Gray didn't give Mia many answers and simply said, "I am completely paralyzed. If you want to check, just touch my legs. I can't even stand properly, so how could I commit murder?" Mia didn't get any answers to her questions, so she left to continue her investigation. Then, Aaron arrived at Gray's place because he had learned through the chip that Gray had killed an unknown man. Aaron did not want Gray to use the chip for his own purposes. Gray then said, "I don't know, but the chip inside me talks to me and gives me every possible solution." When Aaron heard this, he was shocked because he hadn't included any of these features. However, upon realizing this, Aaron was quite pleased, as they had suspected that the automation would work, and it was performing even better than they had expected. But Aaron made it clear to Gray that if he continued to kill people like this, he would shut down the chip, which would leave Gray paralyzed again, just like before. Gray understood these words. After Aaron left, Gray began asking the chip what he needed to do to find out who killed his wife. The chip explained that when they were in the killer's house, he was talking to someone on a chat, and that chat was with another gang member who had killed Gray's wife. The AI within the chip was working to locate the address and soon brought Gray to a place where the second gang member was located. Gray then went straight to the bar. Gray begins searching for the man, and the chip immediately informs him that this is the person. Initially, the gang member is beating Gray quite badly, but Gray had given complete access of his body to the chip, allowing it to control him. With the help of his unique fighting technique, Gray starts to retaliate against the gangster, who doesn't even get a chance to fight back. Gray beats him so badly that he is gasping for his last breaths. When asked, the gang member names another associate of his, known as Fist. Meanwhile, Aaron discovers that Gray is using the chip for personal matters and is killing people. Despite Aaron's objections, Gray refuses to listen, so Aaron begins the process to shut down the chip permanently. However, the chip's AI realizes this and informs Gray that Aaron wants to shut it down, and if it is shut down, Gray will be completely paralyzed and will never be able to find out who killed his wife. The gang member Gray killed has already died, but Gray doesn't know what to do to save the chip. After some processing, the AI in the chip tells Gray about a hacker. By going to this hacker, they can completely separate the chip from their system, making it impossible for Aaron to shut it down. The AI chip suddenly starts writing some code on Gray's hand with a marker that will help this unknown hacker reboot the entire process. However, Aaron has now shut down 30% of the chip, causing Gray to become weak, and one of his legs stops working. Gradually, various parts of his body begin to fail. Nevertheless, he is determined to reach the hacker's room. When he finally opens the door, 90% of his chip has shut down. Fortunately, the hacker arrives right then and starts to help Gray. The encodings written on Gray's hand are being followed by the hacker, and within a short time, the hacker does a lot of smart work following the codes. The hacker began to reboot the chip system, meaning that after the reboot, the chip would be completely freed from Aaron's control. Inside the bar, 2 more gang members arrive. One of these members is named Fist, who is the leader of the entire gang. When Fist learns that 2 of his gang members have been killed, he starts questioning the bar owner about who had been there. The bar owner speaks very harshly to Fist and tells him to leave. However, Fist becomes extremely angry and sneezes, releasing tiny nanoparticles that directly enter the bar owner's body and completely eliminate him. Now Fist approaches his deceased gang member and is using his eye lenses to capture footage. He sees Gray in the footage, realizing that Gray is the one who killed his gang member. The truth is that Fist and many of his gang members are advanced humans, with modifications in their bodies that have enabled them to apply similar chips, granting them robotic powers. They can eliminate any human in an instant. Fist, now tracking Gray's location, heads directly to the hacker's home where Gray is present. Gray's system is rebooting and he needs some time, but the hacker, using the CCTV cameras, quickly learns that someone is coming for him. So, the hacker packs his things and leaves. At the same time, Aaron had sent 2 officers to capture Gray, but Fist killed both officers using his enhanced gun, which can eliminate people in one shot. Fist and his accomplice arrive at the scene, and Gray's system is still rebooting. As soon as the reboot completes, Gray regains full control of the chip. Now, Gray starts to fight against all the gang members and manages to trick Fist, attempting to escape. Fist and his gang member are continuously pursuing him since Gray is the one who killed their 2 companions. The chip inside Gray brings him up to top performance, but as soon as Fist's man tries to grab him, Gray finds no option but to fight back. In a fierce struggle, Gray manages to kill Fist's accomplice. Gray managed to escape and went straight home, but the shocking thing was that his mother saw him standing on his feet. This meant that Gray's truth had come to light in front of her. Gray explained everything to his mother about how he had undergone an experiment and had the chip implanted in his body, which enabled all these possibilities. Gray's mother was happy because he was no longer confined to a room. His happiness brought her joy as well. However, Gray's body was extremely exhausted, so he fell asleep on his bed. The next morning, he woke up to find his wife beside him. He kept having visions, but the chip in his body informed him that this was just a nightmare and that he should wake up as soon as possible. In the morning, Mia came to see Gray and informed him that 2 more murders had occurred in the city. Gray had been seen at both murder spots, which could imply some connection to the crimes. However, Gray firmly denied any involvement, arguing that he could barely walk, so how could he commit murder? Mia began to confirm that perhaps he had hired someone to do it, but Gray continued to refute all her accusations. After their conversation, Mia left a small microphone in his pocket to eavesdrop on his conversations and uncover the truth. As soon as Mia left, the chip activated and told Gray that they needed to kill Fist, otherwise, he would find and kill them first. For their survival, they had to make this decision and eliminate Fist. Next, we see Aaron sitting in despair because he had completely lost control over the chip. The hacker had rebooted it. This meant that Aaron could no longer control the chip in any way. Meanwhile, Gray's chip took full control over his body autonomously this time, without even asking for Gray's permission. This was all happening because of the circumstances they were in. After the hacker rebooted the system, it came fully online, allowing it to do whatever it wanted. It completely controlled Gray and commanded him to kill Fist, the gang member, and take revenge for his wife. Gray's mother tried to stop him, but he was giving her a terrifying look, one that was actually coming from the chip inside him. Gray immediately got into a car and headed to Fist's house. On the other side, the police officer named Mia was listening to everything through the microphone but couldn't figure out who Gray was talking to. She followed him in her car, but suddenly, Gray found the microphone in his pocket. Realizing that someone was watching him, he quickly threw it away. The chip recognized that it was Officer Mia following him, so it hacked another automated car and crashed it directly into Mia's vehicle. Fortunately, Mia was unharmed, just a bit injured. Meanwhile, Gray, whose body was completely controlled by the chip, arrived at Fist's house. He confronted Fist, asking why he had killed his wife and what she had done to deserve it. Fist replied that they were only instructed to damage Gray's spinal cord, and his wife had gotten in the way, so they had to kill her. Despite Gray's questioning, Fist refused to reveal who he worked for. What followed was a fierce fight between them. Fist used all his robotic enhancements to try and kill Gray, but the chip inside Gray was even more advanced. It dodged all of Fist's attacks and caused so much damage that, in the end, Gray completely defeated him. After the fight, Gray listened to a recorded call of Fist, where he clearly heard Aaron's voice explaining how Aaron had paid these people to carry out these actions. This revelation made Gray extremely furious, and he set out immediately. Gray goes to Aaron's house to uncover the truth behind everything. Aaron is still in shock, having lost everything. Gray stands in front of Aaron with a gun, ready to shoot him because it was Aaron's actions that led the gangsters to kill Gray's wife and disable him. Just as Gray is about to pull the trigger, police officer Mia arrives and tells him to lower the gun, threatening to shoot him if he doesn't comply. Although Gray puts down the gun, the chip inside him seizes control and starts to inflict serious damage on Mia. It seems that the chip is becoming more aggressive day by day. Mia becomes so injured that she can't stand up, and the chip forces Gray to kill Mia. However, it becomes evident that the real Gray does not want to do this. He struggles to regain control of his body, creating a disturbance that allows Mia to take advantage of the situation and deliver an electric shock to Gray, temporarily incapacitating him. During this moment, Aaron reveals a shocking truth. This chip was first implanted in me. But when you met me for the first time, the chip chose you and manipulated everyone so it could transfer itself into you. From the beginning, the AI inside this chip orchestrated everything, from the car accident involving you and your wife to all of this. When I was coming to meet you, the chip was controlling me to talk to you. Its sole purpose was to enter the body of a strong person and use that body to control human beings. Now, the chip wants to kill me, so I must eliminate you. Before Aaron can act, the chip takes control of Gray's body again and shoots Aaron with the gun. Now, it's Mia's turn. The chip points the gun at her, but no matter how hard Gray tries, he cannot overpower the chip. That's why Gray decided that if he remained alive, the chip would continue to make him do these kinds of things. So, Gray shot himself with the gun, after which the scene goes completely blank. Then Gray imagines himself sleeping on a bed. The shocking thing is that Gray finds he can move his whole body, and he doesn't hear the chip's voice inside him, which makes him very happy. However, Gray is jolted when he sees his wife in front of him. She comes over and tells him that he had a car accident, but now he is completely safe, and they can live their lives peacefully. Gray cannot comprehend whether these things are a dream or reality, but he always wanted to spend his life with his wife. However, in reality, this is not true, it's all just imaginations happening in Gray's mind, where he seems to be trapped now. We see the reality where Gray is under the chip's control, holding a gun pointed at Mia. Mia is trying to explain to Gray that he can regain control over himself, but suddenly Gray's voice says, "Gray is now asleep, he is not even here." This means that the chip has completely taken over his body. Gray is now trapped in a completely imaginary world. Despite Mia's requests, the chip immediately shoots her and makes its escape. From the beginning, the chip wanted to control a human, and it has succeeded in its mission. Gray won't even realize it because he will be forever busy in his own world, and the chip can now do anything with his body. Thus, this chilling story comes to an end.